From the National Catholic Register, this is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
World news this week has been dominated by events in Syria, where the long rule of the Assad regime fell after insurgents entered the city of Damascus and Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, fled to Russia. To help us understand the gravity of this historic event, we are joined by EWTN News' Middle East and North Africa news editor, Alberto Fernandez, who will give us insights particularly into what this moment means for Syrian Christians. Then, 'tis the season for holiday movies and music. We get a preview of some new faith-based flicks, as well as some classic arts grounded in the true meaning of Christmas. Register staff writer Joseph Pronechen joins us to talk about Netflix's Mary and a lot more. I'm Jeanette DeMello, host of Register Radio. I'm together with Matthew Munson, my co-host, and EWTN News' vice president and editorial director. And as I said, we are joined by Alberto Fernandez, a former U.S. diplomat, the vice president of the Middle East Media Research Institute, and a contributing news editor for EWTN News, whose focus is on the Middle East. We are so grateful, Alberto, to have you joining us today on this very important time.
Thank you so much. Happy to be on.
So this week, as I said, there's a lot going on in Syria. There's been a lot of rejoicing around the world and in Syria over the end of a 53-year dictatorship. And yet, there's deep anxiety, too, for the future of this country, especially considering that the coalition forces that defeated President Assad are led by the jihadist Sunni Muslim group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and that has had past connections with al-Qaeda and Islamic State. You know so much more about this than I do. So, Alberto, can you summarize where we are now?
Well, we're, of course, less than a week away from the fall of Damascus. Damascus fell last Sunday on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, something which Syrian Christians noted and cheered about. You know, it's the end, or it seems to be the end of an incredibly savage, brutal, 13-year-long civil war in Syria that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Mm-hmm. It's estimated that the Assad regime tortured to death at least 50,000 people in its prisons. Syria is broke. It's bankrupt. People are hungry. There is no middle class. The middle class has been impoverished. So that's why people are celebrating. They actually have a lot to celebrate. The problem, of course, is nobody knows what's coming. People are wary about the future, understandably so.
Alberto, for those who are just coming to become aware of what's happening there, can you talk about the history of Christianity in Syria and just how devastating the Assad regime was to them, but also the situation that they're facing now?
Well, of course, Syria is an ancient Christian land. Obviously, today, the majority of the population are Muslims, but it goes back to the gospel and goes back to the Old Testament as well. Syria features rather large there. As well. So the roots go way back, the street called Straight in Damascus and all of that. The Assad regime has been destructive to Christians and to non-Christians because of its very nature. It was a brutal dictatorship. It was a kleptocratic regime. Christians in Syria as middle-class people suffered greatly because middle-class people, had a very difficult time under such a regime, especially in the last 10, 15 years. Most Christians have left Syria over the last 15 years. Basically, the population is down about 80%, so only about 20% at most. So you're talking about maybe 300,000 people. There used to be 1.5 million Syrian Christians in 2010. So only a shadow of what used to be remains today.
So Alberto, you wrote about this very topic, about the Christians in particular, for the Register as this was happening. It was before Damascus fell when you wrote on December 6th. The title of that article is "For Christians and for Everyone Else, an Uncharted Future in Syria." And then the team that you work with so closely, Asimena, CNA's Arabic language news partner, and of course a part of EWTN News, wrote on December 8th, the day that Damascus was overtaken. They interviewed the bishop there, Bishop Hannah Jalouf, the apostolic vicar of Aleppo and the head of the Latin Church in Syria. Of course, there are many Christian churches there in Aleppo. But he said, "Let us not forget that today is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and through the Virgin Mary's intercession, we have reached this moment of joy." And the bells of our churches rang out in Aleppo for the first time in 13 years. So obviously there was a lot of joy. You could see the news of people celebrating in the streets. Christians and everyone are cautiously optimistic. What have you heard from them in particular, and what are they fearing in this moment as well?
Well, obviously people fear uncertainty and the unknown, and the fact that the winners, the so-called winners, are motivated by political Islam gives Christians a lot of pause. At the same time, political prisoners, those who are alive, have come out of prison. The major cities of Syria fell almost without a fight. Very few people in the end wanted to fight for the Assad regime, which is, of course, very telling. That the fear that, we're not talking about Christians, we're talking about Muslims now, the fear that people had about the other guys coming to power had lessened. And the people thought that the status quo under Assad was so intolerable, so bad, so poverty-stricken and brutal that they were willing to take a chance on the unknown. I think something that the Assad regime was not expecting.
Absolutely. And that unknown is still pressing in on everyone, even as we begin to see some form of government take shape. Of course, part of their concern is over who has led that coalition. The man in particular who has become their leader, who has seemingly united these forces, is Mohammed al-Jawlani, a man who was once a part of the Islamic State and then of al-Qaeda, who seems to have distanced himself from those things. You wrote in your commentary at ncregister.com, "Can a leopard truly change his spots?" And so the U.S., the UN, even these Christians we've been talking about seem to be bracing themselves a little. What should we be looking for? What could happen, and why are they bracing themselves?
Well, they're bracing themselves because of this past. Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, that's his, his nom de guerre, was tied to ISIS and was tied to al-Qaeda. Of course, he broke with ISIS. He broke with al-Qaeda, and he didn't only break with them, he actually fought them when they sent their fighters in to challenge him. I mean, he's a ruthless warlord on the battlefield. That said, politically, he's been rather clever so far and been very, very smart in what he said and how he's behaved. He's projected an image of modesty, of mercy. The problem, of course, is do people believe him? But so far, he's a dropout of the Damascus University Medical School who went off to be a jihadist in his early 20s. So he has quite a scary background. That said, everything that they've done since they've taken power has been really smart, reassuring Christians, talking about law and order, talking about forgiveness, playing down the personality cult. For example, they issued a statement prohibiting pictures of him being posted in government offices. If you've been to Syria, the image of the dictator was everywhere. So far, it's been less than a week. They've been at least either good or they've been very clever, very sneaky about how they played this.
We just want to follow up to that. Have they reached out particularly to the Christian leaders? Yes,
there's a video, for example, when Aleppo fell, of them meeting with Bishop Jalouf that you mentioned in Aleppo. And Bishop Jalouf is there. He's smiling. He has a big cross around his neck. They've also had meetings with Christian leaders in Damascus and in Latakia and other places as well. So as far as meetings and as far as what they've said and reassurances, we can't criticize them, not yet, about those things.
Yeah, obviously all of this is not happening in a vacuum. We've got crises all over the Middle East, I think, especially of the situation with Hamas, the situation in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and then, of course, there's Iran. Can you paint a picture of what the fall of the Assad regime means for the region and the prospects of peace or the prospects of more likely war?
Well, of course, it's a great defeat for Iran. Iran was used Syria as one of its puppet states, one of the 4 Arab capitals that the Iranians boasted of controlling. So it's a tremendous defeat for Iran. It's a defeat for Russia, which supported the Assad regime. It's a defeat for Hezbollah, the terrorist group, which used Syria as a kind of safe haven. And they were in the drug business. They were in the drug smuggling business with Assad. So all of them lost. It's less clear about who won. The rebels had support from Turkey and from Qatar. The interesting thing about uncertainty about more peace or more war, that's very interesting. Jolani, the rebel leader, has said that what Syria needs now is peace. And of course, he's right. The country is bankrupt. People are hungry. Everything is destroyed. So he said the right thing. It needs peace. It doesn't want to be dragged into any war. And that was an answer to a question about fighting Israel. Now, that doesn't mean that this man or his movement are moderates. It doesn't mean that they're liberals or that they're tolerant. But it does mean that they're smart about the moment in time that they live in. Syria desperately needs foreign help. So they have to act certain ways and they have to project certain things. And it's common sense that a country that's been at war for 13 years needs peace and tranquility. The challenge is whether he can deliver.
I know this, I don't want to end with a complicated question, but I am ending with a somewhat complicated question. What do you think they need most from the international community, Alberto?
Well, they need 2 things. They need tangible material support for the Syrian people who are in a terrible state. I mean, just a kind of humanitarian support for the Syrian people. That's the one part. The other part is they need cautious engagement, it can be direct or indirect, with those in power to make sure that they don't go down certain paths of extremism, of violence, of intolerance. In other words, I do think that they can be encouraged or pushed to go in the right directions. So kind of, engage with them, but, as President Reagan said, trust but verify. Don't trust them, but do engage with them.
Absolutely. And of course, they need our prayers. And so, Alberto, we are so grateful for your insights into what is happening in Syria and the Middle East. We invite our listeners to go to ncregister.com and read the coverage there. Alberto's commentary is for Christians and for everyone else, an uncharted future in Syria. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. God bless.
You've been listening to Register Radio on EWTN Radio. Next, we'll be talking about holiday films and art with Joseph Pronechen. Stay tuned to Register Radio here on EWTN.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
Welcome back. I'm Jeanette DeMello, host of Register Radio, together with Matthew Bunson, my co-host and EWTN News' vice president and editorial director. As we wind down in this Advent season and as Christmas approaches, it's always a little bit of a challenge to keep focused on the reason for the season. And of course, sometimes holiday music doesn't help. But Joe Pronechen, the Register's longtime staff writer for the Register, has some holiday art, music and film and whatnot that can actually help us focus a little bit. And so we're going to focus on that in this segment. Matthew is the movie buff among us. And so, Matthew, I'm going to pitch it over to you to talk to Joe about some of these great films.
Yeah, Joe, when we're talking about Christmas movies, first, thank you for your review of the more recent films. I know you've been very focused, especially on the new film about Mary. I'm tempted sort of to ask you first, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? But I won't go there, unless you want to answer that question. But let's start though with the new Mary movie that Netflix has done, starring Noah Cohen, and I know that Anthony Hopkins is in it. There obviously have been quite a few movies on Mary over the years, but what were you expecting when you heard that Netflix was making a new movie about the Blessed Mother?
Well, I was anxious to see it when I heard that, and I was hoping for the best for it. It was coming from a Catholic director, D.J. Caruso, and the people associated seemed to be an okay group, but for the most part, a number of them. And I was thinking that he wanted to treat, as he said, he wanted to treat Mary as a person, a real person that we could somehow associate with. And he was getting a non-Hollywood cast for the most part, except for Anthony Hopkins, so that we could concentrate more on Mary's story. So it seemed like a number of things were falling into place, but I did have misgivings along the way. Once I heard that it went through over 70 rewrites, and I said, that's not a good sign. Too many cooks, in a sense, spoil the broth, and too many rewrites spoiled a script in many ways. And then when I saw that there were more than 20 producers and co-producers associated with it, that got me a little bit on edge, too, because I've never seen a film in all these years of reviewing that had that many producers and co-producers. So, again, it was too many cooks spoiling the broth, I thought.
Well, I was going to say, and the director, too, I know Caruso, that you had a chance to talk with DJ Caruso. Probably his most famous film prior to this one was the rather forgettable XXX Return of Xander Cage in 2017. So what did he have to say about making this film?
Well, he had wanted to make this film for a while, and he said he's a faithful Catholic. He said in all these years he's faithful Catholic. His good friend was a late bishop in Los Angeles, and they discussed the film with him several times, a number of parts of the film. And he had his heart in the right place, it seems. But it was hard to get that action-packed thriller kind of movies that he is noted for, car chases and all, out of this film, too, in a way. And that, I think that and the many rewrites and people that he asked for advice, they went across the board. Sure. Christians, Jews, Muslims, all had input into this film, and too much of it came out inaccurate.
A muddled mess, it sounds like. But I did want to jump in, Joe, because you wrote about it. The piece at ncregister.com is what Netflix Mary gets right and what it gets wrong, and we've talked about this muddle of influences. But what does it get right in your perspective?
Okay, one of the things it gets right is that using a cast of unknowns over here, so we could concentrate more on the idea of Mary, and the Mary here, she's young, and our Blessed Mother would have been young at that time, and she is for many parts believable in the sense that for the age and dramatic aspects of it here, we don't see her as the saint she should be, though. She comes late to class in the temple, and she, almost fluffs that off, like, oh, so what, I'm a little late. But at other times, she seems to be, very much concentrated on the idea of holiness over here. So that's one of the things it gets right. It's very atmospheric. Anna and Joachim, her parents, are done well, and so is Anna and Simeon in the temple. That really plays, the presentation scene really plays out well when it does. Joseph is not so good in here. He's okay. He's passable. He's young, as Joseph should have been. His mother, Angelica, said, because they used the Proto-Evangelium of St. James as a source, as one of the sources. And there he's depicted as an extremely old man. He's 90, I believe. As Mother Angelica loved to say, old men don't walk to Egypt, so therefore Joseph
Right.
had to be young, and so he's okay over here, but he's a mixed bag over here. At times he's really good, but at times he's an impetuous youth, so that doesn't play as well over here. Anthony Hopkins as Herod almost goes over the top, but actually brings Herod to, the venomous character that he was in real life, he has many scenes in which he is able to do that, and very frightening in some regards, on that.
Joe,
so the dramatic situations are there, but then they start getting Hollywoodized, and even go into an action-packed ending.
Okay. Well, let me ask you. So, would you recommend people to watch it?
I would say people should take it with a grain of salt. I won't say don't watch it, but I would say that watch it with reservations. Remember that there are many liberties taken over here, with the film, and
they can read
if you want me to, I could mention a couple of things biblically that they get wrong.
I would actually like to move on to some maybe better fare for this season, but I definitely want to encourage people to go to ncregister.com and read your review, because I think that'll give indications and highlights and important clarifications about the troubling liberties that you wrote about. So that's at ncregister.com, and it's a review of Netflix Mary, and you can find that by Joseph Pronechen. But Joe, you did write about another film that you did recommend, right?
Oh, yes. Highly.
I Am the Immaculate Conception. A little bit about that.
Yes, that will play actually in theaters the 14th, December 14th and December 17th. And look up I Am the Immaculate Conception for a theater near you and the time for that. That is absolutely wonderful. It's a docudrama, so it's part of it is dramatized, and part of it is has commentators. Now, the commentators, you're going to get 100% accuracy here, because the commentators, most of them are from the Marian Fathers, including Father Donald Calloway and Father Chris Alar, and a couple other Marian Fathers and experts. And you're going to learn about Mary, the Immaculate Conception. You're going to see a wonderful portrayal of Mary in this film by a Polish actress, and an accurate a picture of Saint Joseph too. Of Jesus in this film. I think even though there are snippets, so to speak, of Jesus in there, it's excellently done, and it doesn't have Hollywood behind it, and maybe that's a good thing. It's a perfect one to see for the holidays over here, if you want to concentrate on the Blessed Virgin Mary, as we should at this time too.
Yeah, no, there have been, of course, many films about the Blessed Mother and obviously Christmas. What are some of your other favorite films looking at the Blessed Mother, but then also your all-time favorite Christmas films?
Well, let's see. My all-time favorite Christmas films are so any of the Scrooges, starting with Alastair Sim. George C. Scott plays a little bit different than Alastair Sim, but he is exceptional in that role, and especially when it comes to him realizing that he's made a mess of his life by being such a miser. Albert Finney's musical Scrooge is another take on Scrooge. Excellent take on Scrooge by Finney. And the bonus it is it's got some really clever songs in it. Now, we don't think of Scrooge as a musical, but this has got some really, really clever songs in there. And obviously, It's a Wonderful Life, with that message for all of us that every man counts, no life is worthless, but really touches so many other lives, and their lives would be empty without us. So, and then Come to the Stable is another really nice one that's good for Christmas time, and it's really a Hollywoodized but a very, very well done version of the founding of the Regina Laudis Monastery in Bethlehem, Connecticut. How that happened, and it's just heartwarming, that particular film is.
I'm going to
So
jump
that's
in
the
here.
best one.
I'm going to jump in, and we have to close out. This is a great discussion. I want to know so much more. But Matthew, I'm going to close with you. What's your favorite film?
Well, I have to agree with Joe that the various versions of A Christmas Carol, I would add in there Patrick Stewart's 1997 take on A Christmas Carol, which is based on his sort of one-man stage play. Very, very memorable. But I think, for me, it's odd to say, I go back to the 1977 miniseries, Jesus of Nazareth, with Robert Powell. It was directed by Franco Zeffirelli. The whole first part of it, the first episode, is on the Nativity. And Olivia Hussey's performance as the Blessed Mother is still one of my all-time favorite performances for her, especially the way they do the incarnation, the Annunciation, and then, of course, the incarnation, the Nativity, the arrival of our Lord. Powerful moments made by a brilliant film director.
Wonderful.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that one. That's I agree with you totally on that, Matthew.
So remember, for more news, analysis, and all that we've been talking about, you can check out ncregister.com, the National Catholic Register online. Thanks for joining us on Register Radio here on EWTN. Until next week, on behalf of my producer, Rich Jesse, Matthew Bunson, and myself, Jeanette DeMello, may God bless you.